Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition, episode 106 of the Lab Epstein Hitting Podcast. No, I don't have a great mustache. If people did catch that, that is Matt Carpenter, who has a great mustache. And the voice that talked about his great mustache, his name, my co host, former coach, friend, Mr. Jake Epstein. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. I wish I had Carpenter's mustache, but
You do. Yeah, I wish I was going to get Juan Soto's money too, by the way. There's a report out that he turned down a 15-year, $440 million deal. I got to tell you, with the Nationals, and look, no player to me is worth $500,000. I already think that players are overpaid as it is. I think the market is inflated. It is what it is.
yeah,
But I don't believe that Juan Soto or any player is worth that kind of money. I don't think the Nationals, though, are going to make the same mistake that they did with Bryce Harper in 2018 when they had the chance to trade him to Houston and get back a couple of really good players that probably could have accelerated their reset that they're in right now. And especially with new ownership coming in, I do think that maybe trading Juan Soto, this would probably be the best time because he has a lot of service time for the most part, 3 years left, 2.5 years left of service time on that contract before he hits free agency. $400 million, 400 plus $1 million. What would you
it's a
do with
lot
that
of
kind of
money.
money?
Yeah, that's a lot of money. You end up buying your own team later. That's what you end up doing, becoming an owner.
That's right. Become like A-Rod or like Jeter.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, you put that much money into one player, and there's just how much you're going to have left over for the rest of your team to support that player.
Right.
It's tough. But they have to, especially the Nationals, they got to go after it. They got, they can't. If they don't show that they're going to go crazy and give them the contract that the fans want, then the fans are going to be upset. You don't
Yeah.
want the fans upset, that's for sure.
Yeah, but that means their ticket prices are going to go up too. 400 million, $440 million. I think fans have to realize at this point, right? That hey, look, it's just too much money. And we want to have as a fan base a sustained winning period here. And I don't think signing a guy to 15 years is something that is, I don't know.
Yes, that's a
Like you mentioned it, you have to be able to put a winning team on the field. How do you put a winning team on the and to do that, you have to buy some players. How do you do that when you have a guy who's making that much money?
Yeah, I don't know. You got to spend even more money.
Right. Unless a lot of it is deferred, that money. But nevertheless, players, for whatever reason, don't like deferred money. They don't like Bobby Bonilla Day for whatever reason.
Love Bobby Bonilla Day.
Me too.
Yeah.
It's the greatest
I love Bobby Bonilla Day.
All right, I got a trade for you with Juan Soto. Just really quick. Yeah. Yay or nay? I was thinking about this prior to the show when I was preparing for episode 106, talking today about hitting, how it's always evolving. That's our main topic. Trade here. Ready? Juan Soto to the Phillies for Kyle Schwarber. Phillies have to eat the rest of Schwarber's contract. Matt Vierling and 2 top prospects from the Phillies to the Nationals. Phillies get Juan Soto. Nick Castellanos moves over to left. Soto plays right. And then you could figure out and finagle everybody in the DH spot when Harper comes back. How do you say no to that?
Well, you got to be able to sign him.
Sign who?
You say no. Huh?
Sign who?
Soto.
You have control for the next 2.5 years of Soto.
Oh, he's got that much time? I thought
it's not. No, no. He's a free agent
Oh.
after the 2024 season.
Ooh.
How do you not do
That's
that
pretty
deal?
good.
I just made a deal for the Phillies, by the way.
You did.
You're welcome. I start charging.
I had
consultant
Vierling's brother at Mizzou, and those guys just such good ball players. Like their whole family, I think there were 3 of them that were just fantastic ball players, just
Not
gritty,
even
hard-nosed ball players. Yeah.
How do you say no to that though? You don't, right?
No, you do that. The Phillies would have to do that.
Phillies would have to probably initiate that.
Mm-hmm.
And
I don't know if anybody's given up Soto with 2.5 years left, though.
The report today is the Nationals are going to try to trade him. The report today being Saturday, the 16th of July. Yeah, that's the report.
Man,
now, look.
That's throwing in the flag right there.
Well,
for the next couple of years.
But that's the thing.
Obviously.
Well, look, the thing about it too, though, if a guy turns down a 15-year, $440 million deal, do you really think that you're
Yeah.
going to sign him as
No.
he gets closer to free agency? I think the best thing to do is kind of trade Juan Soto. And in a way,
Maybe that's
he's sort of the guy one of the guys, right, with Robles, who was part of that last era of Nationals baseball. And maybe it's just time to cut bait and move on and try to get the most out of this trade that you could.
yeah, unless he wants out now, and that's why he declined that offer,
Maybe.
if that offer really existed.
Yeah.
But still, you can still use a guy. You can.
Well, right.
Yeah, he may not want to be there in 2.5 years, but what about next year? You know, if he still has, another 2 year or another year after that, I don't know. That's tough.
I agree. I mean, I agree with you there, but if you're the Nationals, you don't want to make that same mistake you made in 2018 with Bryce Harper and not trading him to Houston. Right. They could have I think they could have gotten Kyle Tucker back in that deal, and ownership said no. They nixed that deal. Mike Rizzo had something in place, from what I read, according to reports. By the way, my lighting today is great on the YouTube side. For those who should be watching on the YouTube side, the Lab Epstein Hitting Podcast YouTube page. The lighting was great. The lighting when I was recording this morning with Cassie on my other podcast, Cross Functionality, was just normal, my normal Jimbo shade lighting that makes me look better than what I am. But now with this light, I got better lighting than you today. It's great.
Yeah, you're glowing.
I'm glowing today. Yeah. That's right. That's right. Not as bad as like, like a year and a half ago when I looked like I was dying.
Yeah, it was a little jaundicey, but we've moved on from there.
I almost deleted that episode off of the YouTube channel, by the way. That's how bad it was. I still may do that. My lighting. Well, I got to get one of those. Not a bad idea. Got to get one of those ring lights. Matt Carpenter, speaking of Major League Baseball, Matt Carpenter of now the New York Yankees, longtime St. Louis Cardinal. He is slashing for New York this year, 385, 474, 954. He's hit 11 home runs in 87 plate appearances after 7 home runs in 418 plate appearances in the previous 2 seasons, 2020 and, of course, 2021. What do you feel that Matt Carpenter, as a hitting guru yourself, a hitting instructor, the man, not the myth, but the legend, Jake Epstein, what do you think Matt Carpenter is doing really well?
We talked about it earlier, the mustache. He's never had the true mustache before. You know, he had more of the beard before in St. Louis, and you can't do that in New York. So the mustache wins. Now,
I would rather have the beard than the if I'm the Yankees, I'd say, players, you can have the beard, but do not wear that stupid mustache. I hate the way that looks. Unless it's like Sal Fasano with the handlebar.
Yeah, it's a good look. We differ there, Jimbo. I would say there's a couple things that have initiated his good success here over the last month or so. Number one, he's born again. You know, he feels good. He has not had a good season in quite a while. His worth has gone downhill, and somebody like the Yankees gave him a chance. And a team that's in first place, the best team in baseball, you feel great. My dad used to say this all the time when I was growing up. When guys get traded, when he got traded from Washington, the Senators, to Oakland in '71, the year before they won the World Series, he went off. And he said it just felt so good to go to a contender. It felt so good to be into a new place. And you used to see that all the time when people get traded to like nice areas. You know, people go to San Diego. They used to call it the San Diego discount. And all of a sudden, they'd always do well. Even though the Padres weren't a great team, whenever they would get traded to San Diego, they'd do well. So I think he got traded to the right team, and he feels he's surrounded. He's not the guy. You know, he's surrounded by amazing athletes, and he can just go in and kind of be himself and not try to carry and not try to do too much. So leads me to my second point, which is he's under control hitting wise. He's not, I mean, he got really big for a few years where he was just trying to lift everything and launch everything out of the park. And he seems to be more in balance. He seems to be, I don't see a huge swing change. I don't see him going from a guy that used to really collapse his backside and swing up, 15 to 20 degrees to a guy that's swinging up, 5 degrees. I still think he's swinging up a fairly good amount. What I did notice is that he tends to anticipate pitches better in locations. So where he would never be able to catch up to anything really above his mid thigh, from the top of his thigh to his belly button. Now I see him cheating to get to those pitches, meaning like he's looking for him. He's making sure his hands stay up. He's still going to hit the pitch down okay, but he's a little bit smarter with his approach in pitches that he's looking for. So I think a combination of him, he's not as steep as he was before. I will say that, but it's not a wholesale change in his swing. He doesn't look drastically different, but I will say his approach is very good in what he knows where pitchers try to get him out, and probably where he's susceptible a little bit more. He's cheating in those areas, which is genius for a veteran hitter. And he's surrounded by great players, and he's in a very comfortable, soothing environment for his personality. And I think all of those things have led him to have a great start. Now he has 80 something at bats. Is that right, Jim?
11 home runs, 11 home runs, 87 plate appearances. That leads me to my next question before we get off of this. I'm very curious. The Yankees, they hit this one out of the park, whether it was analytics, whether it was Cashman alone, whether it was one of his high-level executives, a scout that saw something in Carpenter. What do you think they saw, though, in him that said this guy can succeed here in Yankee Stadium? Because you mentioned that Carpenter's not the guy, but in essence, he is on a nightly basis now because he's been slotted into the number 3 hole in the lineup because he is hitting so well. He's been the most consistent hitter on the Yankees, outside of Judge, of course.
Yeah, I don't know what they saw. I would think that they saw a veteran bat. They saw a great guy who's good in the clubhouse for sure. Mm-hmm. And maybe they just saw a guy that was eager. I mean, there's a lot of guys you can try to plug in that never make it, but he's a guy they plugged in and is doing really well now. I mean, we don't know what the second half of the season, when the honeymoon's over, will happen, but you sure hope that he keeps it going, because it's a really good story for a guy that was really great and a perennial all-star, and then seemingly just really went downhill fast. And now all of a sudden he's digging himself back out. That's a pretty cool story.
All right, be sure to subscribe to the show as well. Apple, Google, Spotify, leave a review. We would greatly, greatly appreciate that. Let's get into our topic. By the way, we did get a listener question, but it wasn't really a hitting question. It came from a loyal listener, Mike, from I forget where he's from, but it came from Mike via jimbopodcast21@gmail.com. He asked us if we're going to do a hitting review on Julio Rodriguez. And we will do that, but it will be,
Absolutely.
Yeah. You sound very...
Put it on the list, man. Put it on the
enthusiastic. Yeah, we're going to be doing that just to answer everybody's question, and Mike's question as well. We will be breaking down Julio in the coming months, because we have Trout coming up in September. We're finally breaking down 2 years, whatever, we're in 3 years into the show. We're finally breaking down Mike Trout's swing. My God. Let's get into today's topic, though. Hitting always evolving. You know, your father mentioned, by the way, your father had a great handlebar mustache. So there's one guy.
He had it was like a sideburn connector.
Yeah, that's right.
It was so great.
That was legendary.
So great.
Legendary facial hair. Your father, though, talked about this in one of his books, hitting how it always evolved. And he mentioned pre-1969, numbers all of a sudden they just started to drop. And we had a way back when we first started doing the podcast, we talked about hitting in different eras and how numbers have dropped, and then they went back up, and then they spiked, and they dropped, and et cetera, et cetera. But pre-1969, those numbers, they plummeted for hitters. And then, things changed. Hitting, title of the episode, hitting evolved. There were new methods, so to speak, that were introduced. But the one thing that I found very interesting, while new methods are always introduced, it seems like to me that hitting does, in essence, in many ways, stays the same fundamentally.
Mechanically, things are very much the same. Mm-hmm. I would say approach-wise, it's ever evolving.
Yeah.
Mechanics, there was, in the newer, I guess you call it the modern era of baseball, from mid 70s, 75 to the mid 80s, there was kind of a dead ball, and that was a more of a mechanical change, right? So that's when we had AstroTurf. That's when we had bigger stadiums, multi-purpose stadiums, baseball and football stadiums that were big. They were 385 to the gaps, not 60 to the gaps like many stadiums are today. And we had different athletes. We had, I don't know if you want to call them better athletes, we had faster athletes, that were playing the game. And so hit the ball on the ground was really important, because the ground was hard. It wasn't like the turf of today where there's a base layer of sand. It was concrete and turf on top of the concrete.
That's right.
And the turf wasn't thick.
That's
Remember, you see bouncing balls like land in front of the outfielder, bounce over their head. So, baseball played to that. So we had, more of a weight shift, finish on the front leg, more of a downswing. I wouldn't call it a chop swing, but it was, a little bit flatter swing, and there wasn't as much power. I guess that's players weren't really driving the ball. And then obviously, more of a resurgence once, 1990 hit or the late 80s hit, Canseco and McGuire and those guys kind of came in. So, in today's game, we're seeing it evolve as well, because we have very small ballparks. We have very hard baseballs, and we have very good pitching. So, what is the best way to score runs? That's what it always comes down to. I watched the Yankees and Red Sox last night with a runner on second base and nobody out, and they couldn't score a run in 2 innings, starting with a runner on second. Nobody bunted that guy over. Nobody pulled a ball. A left-handed hitter couldn't pull a ball to try to move a runner. And I don't get it. You don't even have to get a hit to move a runner
Right.
over. You can just push bunt something. Now we got a runner on third. We can't get him in.
Maybe even deep fly ball at Yankee Stadium, a deep fly ball up the alley in left center. Maybe you could even get a guy to third.
Yeah. So it's a very interesting game of today where it's like they're still stuck in, we got to hit a home run here. We got a runner on second. We need a 2-run home run. You don't need a 2-run home run. You just need 1 run at the bottom of the 10th inning. Yeah. So the game has changed. If they get 4 or 5 hits a game, they're fine with that. If they mix in a couple walks, 3 or 4 walks within that, and they have, of those 4 or 5 hits, they're extra bases. Maybe you have 2 home runs in there and you score 4 or 5 runs. Well, you're gonna win games if you give up less, right? The object of the game, if your pitching is better than theirs. So that part of the game has totally evolved. Mm-hmm. Gosh, I've been seeing things on Twitter with the Glavine, Smoltz and Maddox era. I mean, the strike zone is like 50% bigger than it is today.
Yeah.
And so hitters are constantly behind in the count back then, or they're having to swing earlier in the count. They can't just sit on cookies all the time. So as hitters, we take advantage of what the scenario is in today's baseball. It's typically small strike zones, small ballparks. I saw a stat that I think it was this year, last year, balls hit 95 miles an hour on the ground. Hitters are hitting 287 on balls that are hit really hard on the ground, where 5 or 6 years ago they were hitting almost 100 and something points higher on that same ground ball because of the shifts. Right. So we're still hitting the ball hard, but we're not getting rewarded, where if it was AstroTurf, we'd totally be rewarded. And so the game has changed, and I think it will always evolve based on the surroundings, some of the external. If we always had the same ball since 1950, if every ballpark was 330 down the lines, 380 in the gaps, 410 in center, if everything was the same, then the game would be boring, right? But that would be the game. We couldn't just sit back and try to hit home runs all the time.
Well, that's what they're trying to do with the humidors in every ballpark, though. And players we've mentioned it, players have come out and they've been against that because it takes away the nuance and the home field advantage of that said ballpark.
And they used to, here in Colorado, it was awful. Our summer humidity is like maybe 20 something percent, 15 to 20 something percent. And so those balls were just like BBs, so it wasn't as much the state, the elevation obviously helped, but the ballpark's big, but that ball carries. Same thing in Arizona.
Yeah.
And then you have ballparks where they turn the air conditioning on, when the home team's hitting.
Yeah, that's right.
or vice versa, depending on which way the vents are blowing. So there's gamesmanship everywhere.
You mentioned dead ball era in there and AstroTurf fields and those stadiums. I don't call them ballparks. I call them stadiums, Veterans Stadium. What was that shithole in Pittsburgh? I forget what that one was called.
Three Rivers.
Yeah, right. And then the one in Cincinnati. And it really kind of changed the way hitters hit fundamentally and the way they sort of just approach their at-bats. But I think it really, really drastically changed hitting just in general. I wonder now with these new rules starting to make their way into the game I mentioned it there, with the humidors in every ballpark and the new strike zone, the automatic robotic strike zone that's probably coming into play, that shifts are about to be banned into hopefully, according to some, in 2023. Do you think that that's going to be the next catalyst? Because the real change that I believe happened in hitting was during that dead ball era, and until McGuire and Canseco and Sosa and all these guys went back the other way and they came into the fray, hitting kind of just hit that dead ball lag. Do you think the new rules now are going to be that pillar that'll turn hitting around and continue to have it evolve whatever way it might go?
They're trying.
Right. Yeah.
I will say that the shifts will help. I'm not exactly sure how that's going to work. Do you just have to make sure you're on a certain side of the base? Mm-hmm. I guess that would be the second baseman has to be on the second baseman side of the base, and the shortstop, for instance, has to be on the left side. So is that what it is? I mean, they can still shift, but now we have to have the right amount of people. Do they have to stay within a certain area? Can they not go on the outfield grass too far? Because maybe the second baseman can still play really deep and the shortstop can be barely a half a step on his side of the field, and they can still cover a decent amount, not as much but they can still get there, 5 or 6 steps. So that will definitely help. That stat I mentioned earlier, where players are hitting 287 on 98 mile an hour ground balls, that number is going to go back up again. We'll probably have more players on base because of that. I think the shift part of it will help. I think they should be able to move freely, but I don't believe a second baseman in right field, shallow right field is cool. I think
4 outfielders.
Or 4 outfielders, yeah, which is really what it is. So, yes, what are pitchers going to do? Pitchers aren't going to get worse. You're still going to have pitchers that come in and they're still going to use maybe 7 pitchers a game. I still think that's going to make hitting very difficult. You're not queuing in on a starter and getting 3 at bats off that starter like you used to every day or every game. Like I think that's gone unless they put in some kind of parameters for that rule as well. So hitting is going to be difficult. I don't think it's dead ball by any stretch of the imagination. I think once McGuire and Sosa, they put that deal together in the 90s, I think it revolutionized. But this is fun. Like, this is entertainment watching these guys hit bombs. Right. And I think baseball deep down wants that again. They want that fan interaction with home runs. I think that's why we watched the NHL. I don't know if you remember who ended up winning the Stanley Cup this year, but that's besides the point. But to me, I haven't watched a lot of hockey. Like, you get to watch every year because the Lightning, will run through the playoffs every year. But I could be wrong, but I haven't watched serious hockey in quite a while. There was way more scoring than I ever remember in hockey watching the playoffs this year. So I don't know. And I even asked people, what did they, is the crease, is it smaller now? Like, what's going on? What am I missing? And they're just fast. Hockey players they're just so fast now, and there's so much action going on. So I think baseball, but it's exciting. I mean, you go to a hockey game, you used to see like maybe 2 or 3 goals a game. Now between the two teams, sometimes you're seeing 5 to 10 goals a game regularly. That's crazy to me, especially in the playoffs. So offense is fun. Yeah. Offense is really fun. And I think baseball will do anything it can to keep that. So I think hitters are going to be okay. The shift definitely killed that. Having a pitcher, situational pitchers, only go through the lineup one time. Maybe you can only carry a certain amount of pitchers on a roster to help with that. You can't have the taxi squad as much. I know there's all kinds of rules. They're trying to limit how the pitchers can attack the offense of the other team. And we'll just have to see what happens over the next couple of years. But everyone evolves. It usually starts with pitching.
Mm-hmm.
And then the game and the hitters catch up. And that's usually how it works. If pitchers nowadays, they're throwing, high spin rate fastballs up top. Hitters are making their adjustments to flatten off their swings. In the state, we talked about Carpenter cheating up. Then all of a sudden, we might see the next generation of sinker slider pitchers again.
Yeah.
Because everyone, whatever, maybe they change their arm slot and they're trying to get more east to west direction on the pitches. And now hitters have to make another adjustment.
And what do you see going forward? How hitting is always evolving. That's the title of today's episode. What do you see going forward with guys' approaches? How do you see that evolving in the years to come?
I definitely am seeing flatter, more level swings the last 2 or 3 years. Players making a conscious effort to catch up to high fastballs. If you just watch guys doing tee work, that's usually you watch major leaguers. Hey, this is what I'm working on. Freddie Freeman, you could YouTube it or whatever. MLB Network. This is what I'm working on. This is what Trout's working on. Trout's a great low ball hitter who drops his barrel, but he's working on staying on top and chopping ground balls off a tee. Like, what? That doesn't match up with anything that you do, but it matches up with him. He's doing the right thing. So we're definitely seeing a lot more of that. And I'm seeing a lot more of that at the college level and the minor league level as well. We may have mentioned this before. I'm trying to think of his name. Nolan for the Cardinals, the guy they just brought up. He was
Nolan
the first rounder. Gorman, yeah. So Gorman, I mean, I have his videos when he was in high school and all my notes on him and what he was doing. And he had the most beautiful showcase swing. He swung up at like 20, 25 degrees and he was so big and strong, he'd hit top spin home runs off of BP, 45 miles an hour BP. That's what, and in high school, when guys aren't throwing that hard, he just teed off. And then 2 years later, I see him in Double A or wherever he was. I was like, that's a different swing. Like that's a major. He has totally changed his swing path. Same swing. I mean, same mechanics. He never had bad mechanics, but he had a different swing plane. And whatever happened with him, just being around pros, being around other big leaguers, being around professional coaches, using a wood bat every day, instead of a metal bat, whatever it was, he adjusted his swing plane. And when I saw that, I'm like, this guy's he's going to be really, really good, because a lot of times you don't see players make that adjustment until years into their career. And he made it within a year and a half or something. So I'm definitely seeing that. So it's being taught a little bit more at the minor league level. Yeah, they're not. Maybe at the big league level, they're having guys try to launch balls, but they're not. I really don't think that's the case, at least from the major league coaches that I know and the people that I talk to. It's not. They may be looking for extra bases and home runs, but they're not actively trying to lift balls out of the park because it makes them so susceptible to fastballs up in the zone. So what you're seeing is players that are working against that. They may be natural home run hitters like Carpenter, guys that swing up a ton or trying to lift. Maybe they've lifted the last 4 or 5 years. Aaron Judge would be a perfect example of this, a guy trying to drop and drive and launch balls really high. And all of a sudden, these guys are starting to make adjustments to be a little bit flatter than they were. So they're not swinging down, but they're swinging up less. And now all of a sudden, they're having really good success. So I think the combination, it's why we have to treat every player differently. They all do different things well. And we all have to I was telling my daughter the other day, she's the flattest swinger in the country, I think. I mean, she might be 0 degrees on every single pitch somehow. I don't know how she does it. And I need her to be up more, especially at her age. So I'm like, you got to lean back. You got to swing up. We hit off the tee. I'm like, swing up as much as you can. She gets like a line drive over the second base. It's very minimal.
Yeah.
And so she was like, yeah, my dad told me to lean back and swing up. And one of the other girls on the team's like, well, that doesn't seem like it would work. And I'm like, well, Viv, that wouldn't work for her. She already drops her hands and then swings up too much. Like, that's the worst advice that I would never tell that player what I tell you. And even though they're all 12 years old, they don't know what the heck's going on. It just means every player is unique, and you have to take what they are doing and try to make them better. And sometimes it's up more, sometimes it's down more, sometimes it's back more, sometimes it's in more. Whatever it is, do your best to help that player. And that's what I've done my entire coaching career. And I think that's what fortunately, I'm still coaching, so I'm doing something right.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't run me off yet, but I think that's why you have to treat people. You have to know enough that every player needs something different, and if you can find what that is, then you can make good players great.
And you know what? You mentioned in there a bunch of Yankees. Get about Joey Gallo, of course. He's got a very upward type swing. I found this on baseball, or somebody tweeted this. The Anthony Rizzo I have to read it. I'm sorry.
This is funny. I just saw this.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to read it for the audience who probably didn't see it. The Anthony Rizzo Foundation is auctioning off a 30-minute hitting lesson with Anthony Rizzo, Aaron Judge, and Giancarlo Stanton. I'm thinking of bidding and donating it to Joey Gallo. That poor guy. He was a big-time prospect at one point coming up to the Rangers. It's really kind of a shame.
He had great years with the Rangers.
Did.
But he has other issues that aren't mechanically based. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He doesn't see like other guys see.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes the game very, very difficult.
Yeah, like David Ortiz at one point, right? What was it, 2013 or 20, whenever it was, when he was struggling to see? He had all these struggles with the play. Everybody thought he was done, and then he went to the eye doctor and started hitting again.
Yeah.
So next week, good stuff. This week, of course, episode 106. But next week, we mentioned getting on plane there towards the end. We're going to be talking about that. Getting on plane, re-examined. We're going to talk about it's not really talked about much anymore. We're going to talk about hitters getting on plane and staying on plane and that bad path. Also next week. So the draft, the Major League Baseball draft just happened yesterday because this show came out on a Monday.
Oh, it did. Wow.
It did. Yeah.
Talk about who they did.
By the magic of technology. And the Major League Baseball draft happened yesterday. And we're going to talk a little bit about the Brewers' first round draft selection. Should be pretty interesting. We're going to talk about that next week and sort of maybe do like a true and false type deal. I'll volley some things to you off a little scouting report that I'll do. So we'll do that next week. Plus, also next week, I will be revealing who I think is going to make the postseason from each league. I think it's that time, right? Right after the All-Star break, it's that time. I'll reveal my World Series winner right before the postseason. But next week,
that's big.
Next week, I'm revealing my postseason teams.
Okay.
It's next week.
Get your DraftKings account ready.
Yeah, BetMGM, FanDuel, all Barstool. That's next week.
Like
I would like to quickly promote my new podcast with Cassidy Riley Boscia. It is on Wednesday, Cross Functionality on Apple, Google, Spotify, also on YouTube as well. Search Cross Functionality on YouTube. You can watch us do the show as you watch us do the show on The Lab every week. The Lab Epstein Hitting Podcast YouTube.
But unfortunately, your lighting isn't as good, right?
No,
is that what you're
mentioning? No, I don't like this lighting, by the way. It's my face like
luckily
glowing.
Cassidy makes up for it, probably.
So yeah. She has decent lighting, perfect kind of balance. Me, I'm kind of like glowing here. Next week I got to figure out a new method of lighting. Jim versus the lighting, round 106. 2.5 years in, still can't figure out that. We figured out the show, can't figure out the lighting. What do you got coming up at the Lab?
I think everyone's on vacation. That's what's going on at the Lab now.
All right.
We have a couple. The summer seasons. Not the coaches, the players. Everybody in Texas is making one last dash here until school starts. So yeah, we do still have a couple camps, like mini camps we're doing with select players, and then we have our college and high school prospect stuff on Wednesday nights, which is really cool. And that's about it, man. Otherwise, we're just ramping up. We're creating our fall system. So we every season, depending on where we are, fall season now, all of a sudden it's time to get back to, okay, what are your strengths and weaknesses? And we need to fix those weaknesses. We need to minimize them as much as we can. So we're starting to do reports on all the players and figure out what we need to do with said player to make them better than they were this past year. So
that's right.
That's what we're prepared for.
And that's what teams are doing. They're preparing player plans for the draft, for the players that they may draft and put into their player development system. What a great time. I like how I know a lot of scouts and a lot of baseball people don't like how the draft is moved back. I kind of like how it is moved back. I'm not in that situation scenario where you're
a college coach.
Yeah, or a scout, but I'm sure I'd feel differently. But I do think it's good overall for the game that the draft is during the All-Star week. All right, that's all I got. What else you got? You done? You done? He's he's coughing, so he just muted his mic.
I found the mute button. Nope, same thing with the online academy. We're ramping up for the fall and creating plans and programs for players. So no, that's it for me. Just doing the same stuff and trying to get players better.
Well, I got nothing else. I'm going to go back to NHLTradeRumors.com and see who the Lightning have signed. That's right. Season is, I think, in 87 days until the season starts. Yeah, until the Avalanche go on to try to defend their Stanley Cup that they cheated to get anyway. All right, we will. They didn't really cheat. I'm just kidding. They will. They played well. We'll talk to you next week, everybody. Have a good one. Take care.